Everything you're experiencing right now, every single thing in your life, you sent out first and it came back to you exactly as you sent it. This is the law nobody taught you, and it's working every second whether you know it or not. I'm going to show you how Florence Scovel Shinn decoded this ancient law, and how understanding it changes everything about what you attract. Hit subscribe to Attraction Magnet right now, smash that like button, and at the end, comment which example shocked you most, because this is going to reveal why your life looks exactly the way it does. Every word you speak, every thought you think, every action you take, every emotion you feel is a boomerang you're throwing into the universe that must return to you with perfect accuracy. Florence Scovel Shinn discovered this fundamental spiritual law that most people live their entire lives never understanding, wondering why bad things keep happening to good people, or why life feels unfair when the universe is actually operating with perfect mathematical precision. The law she taught is simple but absolute. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap, which means you're getting back exactly what you put out, not what you want, not what you think you deserve, but what you're actually broadcasting through your consciousness. This isn't punishment or reward. It's just how reality operates, like gravity or electricity. It works the same for everyone regardless of whether they believe in it or understand it. Most people look at their lives backwards. They see their current circumstances and blame external factors, other people, the economy, their childhood, bad luck, timing, or a cruel universe, never realizing they're looking at the harvest of seeds they planted themselves through their own thoughts, words, and feelings. Florence worked with thousands of people who were shocked when she showed them the direct connection between what they habitually gave out and what they were receiving back. The woman who constantly complained about being broke was literally speaking poverty into existence. The man who criticized everyone attracted criticism back to himself. The person who lived in fear magnetized fearful situations. The universe isn't personal, it's mechanical. It reflects back to you whatever frequency you're broadcasting, and most people are unconsciously broadcasting frequencies that create the exact opposite of what they consciously say they want. Here's what's going to completely change how you see your life. Right now, look around at everything you're experiencing: your bank account, your relationships, your health, your opportunities, your daily frustrations, your recurring patterns. All of it is a perfect mirror showing you what you've been giving out. This can feel overwhelming or even unfair at first, especially if you're facing challenges you didn't consciously choose. But Florence taught that this law is actually the most empowering truth you could ever learn, because it means you're not a victim of random circumstances. You're a creator who's been creating unconsciously and can now start creating consciously. When you understand that everything comes back, you suddenly have total power to change your life by changing what you send out. No more waiting for external things to shift. No more feeling helpless. No more blaming others. But if this law is always working perfectly, why do most people never connect their output with their input and keep creating lives they don't want? The biggest confusion people have about this law is thinking that wanting something or needing something means they're giving it out. But Florence was crystal clear that the universe responds to what you're actually broadcasting energetically, not what you're verbally claiming you desire. You can say you want prosperity all day long, but if you're feeling poor, speaking lack, and acting from scarcity, you're giving out poverty consciousness, and poverty is what must return. You can say you want love while simultaneously believing you're unlovable, criticizing your body, rejecting compliments, and expecting rejection, which means you're giving out unworthiness, and that's what comes back as more experiences of being unwanted. The universe is like a perfect mirror or echo. It doesn't judge your desires as good or bad. It simply reflects back the energetic frequency you're consistently emitting through your dominant thoughts, words, and feelings. Florence documented case after case of people whose words directly contradicted their desires, creating confusion about why their affirmations and prayers weren't working. A man would pray for financial abundance in the morning, then spend the entire day saying things like, "I can't afford that. Money is so hard to make. Rich people are greedy. I'll never get ahead," essentially giving out poverty consciousness 18 hours after giving out abundance. Consciousness for 2 minutes. The universe doesn't do math on your intentions. It responds to your consistent frequency. And if your broadcasting lack 23 hours and prosperity 1 hour, you're getting back exactly what you're predominantly sending out. Another woman wanted a loving relationship but spent her time gossiping about failed marriages, criticizing men, talking about how all the good ones were taken, essentially giving out judgment, cynicism, and scarcity about love, then wondering why quality men never approached her. Here's the part that's going to revolutionize your manifestation. You must align your consistent energetic output with your desired input, which means becoming conscious of what you're actually giving out, moment by moment, through your casual conversations, your knee-jerk reactions, your habitual thought patterns, and your emotional baseline. Florence taught that you can't trick the universe with surface-level positive thinking while maintaining deep-seated negative beliefs. The universe reads your energetic signature, not your verbal declarations. A woman learned this when Florence pointed out that she asked for prosperity, but her most common phrase was, "I'm so broke," which she said casually dozens of times per day, not realizing each utterance was a seed of poverty she was planting. When she changed that one phrase to "money flows to me easily," maintaining that new energetic output consistently, her financial situation shifted within weeks because she'd finally aligned what she was giving out with what she wanted to receive. But if aligning output with desire is this simple, why do people resist changing their habitual way of speaking and thinking? One of the most powerful demonstrations of the boomerang law that Florence taught is what happens when you criticize, judge, or condemn others. It comes back to you as criticism, judgment, and condemnation in your own life, with perfect precision. Most people have no idea they're creating their own persecution, gossip, and harsh treatment by doing those exact things to others, either out loud or in their minds. Every time you judge someone as wrong, stupid, selfish, or less than, you're sending out judgment frequency, which must return to you as experiences of being judged. It's not karma in the sense of punishment. It's simply the mechanical operation of spiritual law. What you give out must come back. Florence emphasized that this happens regardless of whether the person you're judging knows about it. Your thoughts about them create a boomerang that returns to you, not to them. They might never experience any consequence of your judgment, but you definitely will. Florence worked with a woman who complained constantly about being criticized by her family, co-workers, and even strangers, feeling victimized by everyone's harsh opinions and judgments about her choices. When Florence investigated what this woman habitually gave out, she discovered an endless stream of critical thoughts and words about everyone around her. She judged her sister's parenting, criticized her colleagues' work, condemned her neighbor's lifestyle, found fault with how people dressed, talked, and lived their lives. Florence pointed out that she was experiencing the exact frequency she was broadcasting. The universe was simply returning her criticism as experiences of being criticized. The woman was shocked because she saw her judgments as justified observations about others' flaws, not recognizing that the spiritual law doesn't care about justification. It only reflects frequency. When she committed to stopping all criticism of others for 30 days, blessing instead of judging, her experience of being criticized by others virtually disappeared. Here's what most people never realize about judgment and criticism. When you judge someone else's journey, choices, appearance, or life, you're actually revealing your own insecurities and limitations, and you're magnetizing those exact insecurities back to yourself. Florence taught that secure, abundant, peaceful people don't need to judge others because they're not threatened by differences or others' success. Judgment always comes from a place of lack consciousness, fear, or unworthiness that's then reflected back to the judger. A man who constantly criticized wealthy people as greedy or corrupt found himself stuck in poverty, not because wealthy people were blocking him, but because his judgment of wealth prevented wealth from flowing to him. The universe couldn't give him what he was condemning. Another woman who harshly judged overweight people found herself gaining weight and being unable to lose it. Her judgment had created resistance in that exact area. The moment you stop judging others, you free yourself from being judged. It's that simple and that powerful. But if criticism creates such negative returns, why are people addicted to judging and gossiping about others? Florence discovered something that sounds harsh, but transforms lives when understood. Every moment you spend hating someone, resenting them, or wishing them harm, you're poisoning your own life, not theirs, because that toxic energy must return to you as your own experience of being hated, resented, or harmed. The universe doesn't deliver your hate to your enemy. It delivers the frequency of hate back to you as hatred in your own experience. And it delivers your resentment back as experiences of being resented, creating a hell of your own making while the person you hate often has no idea and lives their life unaffected. This is one of the most challenging teachings for people to accept because the ego wants revenge, wants the other person to suffer, believes that maintaining hatred is somehow protecting you or proving you're right, when actually it's the most self-destructive frequency you can broadcast. Florence counseled a man who'd been consumed with hatred for his ex-business partner who'd betrayed him years earlier. He thought about this betrayal daily, fantasized about the partner's downfall, cursed him in his mind, told the story of the betrayal to anyone who'd listen. His entire life had fallen apart since the betrayal, not because of what the partner did, but because he was giving out hatred and betrayal energy constantly, which returned to him as more experiences of betrayal, more situations where he was taken advantage of, more relationships that ended badly. The ex-partner, meanwhile, had moved on, was successful and happy, completely unaffected by this man's hatred because the hatred didn't reach him. It just poisoned the man who was holding it. Florence taught him that forgiving the partner wasn't about letting him off the hook. It was about releasing the poison that was destroying his own life. Forgiveness is always selfish in the best way, because you're the one who benefits most. Here's the truth about resentment and hatred that will set you free. When you refuse to forgive, when you hold on to grievances, when you rehearse old hurts, you're not punishing the person who hurt you. You're punishing yourself by keeping that low toxic frequency active in your energy field, which then attracts more situations that match that frequency. Florence said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent to throw it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned while they remain untouched. A woman held resentment toward her mother for childhood neglect, and that resentment manifested as everyone in her adult life treating her with neglect and indifference. She was unconsciously recreating the very experience she resented because she was still broadcasting that frequency through her unforgiveness. The moment she genuinely forgave her mother, releasing all resentment and blessing her instead, people suddenly started treating her with care and attention. The external shifted because her internal frequency had shifted. Forgiveness isn't weakness or approval of wrongdoing. It's the ultimate act of self-love because it stops the boomerang of pain from continuing to return. But if forgiveness is this beneficial, why does it feel impossible to forgive certain people or situations? Florence taught one of the most practical applications of the boomerang law. Your financial situation is a direct reflection of your giving, not just your earning, and most people have it completely backwards. thinking that they'll give when they have more, instead of understanding that giving is what creates the flow that brings more. If you're experiencing lack, you're giving out lack consciousness, hoarding energy, fearful grasping, and the universe must return more lack because that's the frequency you're broadcasting. If you're experiencing abundance, you're giving freely, trusting the endless supply, circulating energy, and the universe must return more abundance because that's the frequency you're broadcasting. The spiritual law doesn't care about how much money you currently have in your bank account. It cares about the consciousness from which you're operating. Are you living in giving mode or getting mode? Florence documented a powerful case of a man who was desperately poor, could barely pay rent, stressed about money constantly, and his automatic response to every request for charity or help was, "I can't afford it." See, this phrase and the energy behind it, scarcity and withholding, was creating his poverty because he was giving out lack, and it was returning as more lack. Florence taught him to start giving whatever he could, even tiny amounts, with an energy of abundance and joy, rather than waiting until he felt he could afford to give. He resisted, arguing that he had nothing to give, but she explained that the giving comes first, then the receiving, not the other way around. You must prime the pump before water flows. He started giving $1 here, $5 there, whenever he felt any impulse to give, and he practiced saying, "Money flows to me easily, and I circulate it freely," instead of, "I can't afford it." Within 1 month, his income had doubled through unexpected sources. Within 3 months, he'd paid off his debts and had savings, all because he'd reversed his energetic output from hoarding to circulating. Here's what changes everything about your financial situation. The universe is an infinite source of supply that flows through you, not to you, and it can only flow through an open channel. Giving keeps the channel open while hoarding closes it. Florence explained that money is like water. It must flow to stay fresh and abundant. But when you dam it up in fear, it stagnates and stops flowing in. People who understand this law give joyfully and trust completely that their supply is endless, which creates the energetic frequency that attracts endless supply, while people who operate from fear of not having enough grip tightly to what little they have and inadvertently choke off the very flow that could bring them more. A woman tested this principle by committing to give 10% of every dollar she received, no matter how small her income was, even when it felt scary or impractical. And she watched her income increase by 300% over 6 months, as the giving established a flow that brought more and more back to her. The boomerang law in finances is precise. What you give out in consciousness about money, generosity or stinginess, abundance or lack, is exactly what returns as your financial experience. But if giving creates receiving, why does the ego resist giving and insist on hoarding instead? One of the sneakiest ways people sabotage their lives through the boomerang law is chronic complaining, which Florence identified as one of the most destructive habits because every complaint is a declaration of what you don't want that actually magnetizes more of it. When you complain about your job, you're giving out dissatisfaction with work, which must return as more dissatisfying work experiences. When you complain about your body, you're giving out rejection of your physical self, which must return as more reasons to reject your body. When you complain about the weather, traffic, prices, politics, or anything else, you're giving out resistance to what is, which must return as more situations that create resistance. Most people think complaining is harmless venting or just stating facts, but Florence understood that every word is a seed you're planting, and complaining plants seeds of discontent that grow into harvests of more things to be discontent about. Florence worked with a woman who complained constantly about everything: her husband, her kids, her house, her neighbors, her health, the government. the economy. Literally nothing in her life satisfied her. She saw herself as realistic or honest, just calling things as they were. But Florence showed her that she'd created a life perfectly matched to her complaining frequency. Everything really was unsatisfying because she'd been broadcasting dissatisfaction for years. The woman protested that she'd have nothing to say if she couldn't complain, which revealed how deeply the habit had embedded itself in her personality. Florence gave her a challenge: go 30 days without complaining about anything, and instead find something to appreciate in every situation, even when it's difficult. The woman struggled intensely the first week, catching herself mid-complaint dozens of times. But as she persisted, her life began to transform. Her husband became more affectionate, her kids more cooperative, opportunities appeared, health improved. The external world hadn't changed. Her internal frequency had, and the universe was now reflecting back appreciation instead of complaint. Here's the powerful shift that happens when you stop complaining. You realize that complaining was keeping you stuck in victim consciousness, giving your power to external circumstances, while appreciation puts you in creator consciousness, where you're actively directing your experience. Florence taught that you can't complain your way to a better life. You can only appreciate your way there, because appreciation is giving out positive expectation, which returns as positive experiences. Every time you catch yourself about to complain, you have a choice: continue giving out dissatisfaction and receive more dissatisfaction back, or shift to finding something appreciable and receive more to appreciate. A man who eliminated complaining from his vocabulary for 90 days reported that his entire life had transformed not through any external changes, but through the internal shift that then manifested externally. Problems that had seemed insurmountable either resolved themselves or stopped bothering him. Relationship conflicts dissolved. Work became enjoyable. He felt like he'd stepped into a different reality, when actually he'd just changed the frequency he was broadcasting. The boomerang law is perfect. Send out complaints and receive more to complain about. Send out appreciation and receive more to appreciate. The choice is always yours. But if complaining creates such negative returns, why is it so addictive and socially acceptable? Florence emphasized that your word is your wand, the most powerful creative tool you possess, and every word you speak is literally an order to the universe that it must fill, because the boomerang law operates through vibration, and words carry specific vibrations that set creation in motion. When you say, "I'm so tired," you're ordering tiredness. When you say, "I can't afford that," you're ordering lack. When you say, "Nobody appreciates me," you're ordering experiences of being unappreciated. When you say, "I always get sick in winter," you're ordering illness. Most people have no idea they're using their words to create their reality, speaking carelessly, complaining habitually, or joking about negative things, not realizing that the universe doesn't understand jokes or sarcasm. It only understands the vibration of your words and manifests accordingly. Florence told the story of a woman who joked constantly about ending up in the poorhouse. It was her favorite phrase whenever discussing finances. "Better start saving for the poorhouse," she'd laugh, thinking it was harmless humor. Years later, she found herself destitute, actually in poverty, living in conditions she'd joked about. And when Florence reminded her of her habitual phrase, the woman was horrified to realize she'd literally spoken herself into the poorhouse. The subconscious mind and the universe don't distinguish between serious declarations and jokes. They simply accept your words as instructions and get to work manifesting them. Another man casually said, "I'd die if I ever had to speak in public," not meaning it literally, just expressing his fear of public speaking. Years later, he developed a panic disorder, specifically around public speaking, so severe it nearly ended his career. His casual words had become his reality because he'd given the universe an order. Here's what transforms your entire life when you understand the power of words. You become vigilant about every word that comes out of your mouth, treating your speech as the sacred creative act it actually is, eliminating careless phrases, negative declarations, and fearful predictions. Florence taught her students to speak only what they wanted to experience, to use their words to create, rather than to describe current unwanted circumstances. Instead of, "I'm so broke," say, "Money flows to me easily." Instead of, "I always get sick," say, "I am healthy and strong." Instead of, "Nobody loves me," say, "I am deeply loved and appreciated." This isn't lying or denial, it's understanding that words create reality rather than just describing it. And you're choosing to create with your words what you actually desire rather than perpetuating what you don't want. A woman transformed her health by changing one phrase. Instead of answering, "How are you?" with her usual litany of symptoms and complaints, she started saying, "I'm getting better every day," even when she felt terrible. Her health actually did improve dramatically, as her consistent words created a new reality. Your words are boomerangs, they go out, and they must come back as your lived experience, so choose them as carefully as you'd choose what to plant in a garden you'll harvest from. But if words are this powerful, why aren't people more conscious and careful about what they say? Florence taught a profound aspect of the boomerang law that most people never consider. Whatever you wish for others, bless or curse, praise or criticize, hope for or fear for, you're actually wishing for yourself because the universe can't distinguish between you and them in terms of where to deliver the energetic order. When you genuinely wish someone success, you're aligning yourself with success frequency, which returns to you as your own success. When you secretly hope someone fails, you're aligning yourself with failure frequency, which returns to you as your own failure. When you bless someone's relationship, you're giving out relationship blessing energy, which returns as blessings in your own relationships. When you're jealous of someone's good fortune and wish they'd lose it, you're giving out loss and lack, which returns to you as loss and lack. Florence documented a case that perfectly illustrates this principle. Two women worked in the same office. One was promoted and received a significant raise. The first woman was genuinely happy for her colleague, congratulated her sincerely, felt no jealousy, and actively wished her continued success in the new role. Within 2 months, this woman also received an unexpected promotion and raise. The second woman was jealous, talked behind the promoted woman's back, hoped she'd fail in the new role, secretly wished she'd get demoted. This woman not only didn't get promoted, she was actually demoted herself within 3 months and eventually fired. The universe delivered to each woman the exact frequency she was broadcasting toward the other. Genuine blessing returned as blessing. Jealous cursing returned as cursing. Neither outcome had anything to do with the woman who was originally promoted. It had everything to do with what each woman gave out energetically in response to her success. Here's the life-changing practice Florence taught around this principle. Make it a habit to bless everyone, especially people who have what you want, because blessing them aligns you with that frequency and magnetizes it to yourself. When you see someone with a beautiful relationship, bless them and their love, which aligns you with love frequency. When you see someone with abundant wealth, bless their prosperity, which aligns you with prosperity frequency. When you see someone healthy and fit, bless their vitality, which aligns you with vitality frequency. This is the opposite of what ego wants to do. Ego wants to compare, envy, diminish, or criticize what others have, but that energy creates lack in your own life. A man practiced this principle religiously, blessing every successful person he encountered, every happy couple, every thriving business, every demonstration of what he wanted to experience. He found that opportunities, relationships, and abundance started flowing to him at an unprecedented rate because he'd trained himself to consistently give out blessing frequency. The boomerang law is precise. Bless others and receive blessings. Curse others and receive curses. It's your choice in every moment. But if blessing others brings blessing to yourself, why does jealousy and comparison feel so natural and automatic? Florence identified a crucial distinction that determines the quality of your life. Are you operating from service consciousness or selfish consciousness? Because each creates a completely different return through the boomerang law. When you give from a genuine desire to serve, help, contribute, or add value to others' lives, you're broadcasting service frequency, which returns to you as the universe serving you through other people, opportunities, and unexpected support. When you operate from selfish consciousness, constantly asking, "What's in it for me?" taking without giving, using people for your benefit, you're broadcasting selfishness frequency, which returns to you as the universe being selfish with you, withholding opportunities, people using you, and a general experience of lack and struggle. Florence worked with a businessman who couldn't understand why his ventures kept failing despite his intelligence, hard work, and strategic thinking. When she investigated his consciousness, she found that his primary motivation in every business deal was, how much can I extract from this? He saw customers as sources to exploit, employees as resources to minimize cost on, and partners as people to outmaneuver. He was operating from pure selfish consciousness, and the universe was returning that energy as failed businesses, betrayed partnerships, customers who complained and demanded refunds, and employees who stole or worked poorly. Florence taught him to shift his entire approach to how can I serve and provide genuine value, to see his business as a vehicle for contribution rather than extraction. He resisted at first, arguing that business was about profit, not charity, but she explained that the greatest profits come to those who provide the greatest service. And service consciousness actually makes you wealthier than selfish consciousness ever could. When he genuinely made this shift, his business transformed. Customers became loyal advocates, employees went above and beyond, partnerships thrived, and his income actually increased significantly. Here's the profound truth about service versus selfishness that changes how you approach everything. The universe is infinitely abundant and wants to give you everything you desire, but it can only flow through you when you're in giving mode. Service consciousness opens the channel for receiving, while selfish consciousness closes it. Florence taught that this doesn't mean being a doormat or giving until you're depleted. It means approaching life with a genuine desire to contribute value, help others win, and make things better wherever you go. A woman applied this to her job search. Instead of going into interviews asking, "What can this company give me?" she shifted to, "What value can I bring to help this company succeed?" And she noticed that offers started coming to her instead of her having to chase them, because her service consciousness was magnetic while her previous selfish consciousness had been repellent. The boomerang law guarantees that what you give out returns. Give out service and receive service. Give out selfishness and receive selfishness. And the quality of your life is determined by which frequency you habitually broadcast. But if service consciousness brings such abundance, why does the ego resist serving and insist on hoarding? Now that you understand that everything you give out must come back, Florence's ultimate teaching is how to consciously and deliberately use this law to create exactly what you desire. And it's simpler than you might think, but requires consistent discipline and awareness. The formula is straightforward. Decide what you want to experience in your life, then start giving out the exact energy, words, actions, and consciousness of that desired experience before you see any evidence of it manifesting, trusting completely that the boomerang law will return it to you. Want love? Give out love by being loving to everyone you encounter. Want prosperity? Give out prosperity by being generous and speaking abundance. Want respect? Give out respect by honoring everyone. Want health? Give out health by blessing your body and others' bodies. Want success? Give out success by celebrating others' victories and visualizing your own. Florence taught a specific practice she called living from the end, which means inhabiting the consciousness of having already received what you desire and giving out from that fulfilled state, rather than from the lacking state of not having it yet. If you want a loving relationship, don't give out desperate seeking energy. Give out the energy of someone who is already loved. Treat yourself lovingly. Speak as if you're already in partnership. Bless couples you see. If you want financial abundance, don't give out poverty consciousness, complaining about bills. Give out the energy of someone who is already prosperous. Tip generously, give freely, speak confidently about money flowing. The boomerang law doesn't care about your current circumstances. It only cares about the frequency you're consistently broadcasting. And it will reorganize reality to match that frequency. A man used this principle to transform from unemployed and struggling to successfully employed within weeks by giving out the energy of valuable contribution and confident capability rather than desperate need for a job. Here's the practice that ties everything together and activates the boomerang law in your favor. For the next 30 days, become completely conscious of everything you're giving out through your thoughts, words, actions, and feelings, and ruthlessly eliminate anything that doesn't match what you want to receive back. Catch yourself before complaining and shift to appreciation. Notice when you're judging someone and shift to blessing them. Feel yourself about to speak lack and shift to speaking abundance. Recognize when you're being selfish and shift to being of service. This requires vigilance because you're changing deeply ingrained habits. But Florence promised that if you can maintain the consciousness of what you desire for just 30 days, sending out only that frequency, you'll be amazed at how rapidly your external reality shifts to match. A woman who did this exercise reported that by day 30, her life was virtually unrecognizable. Problems had dissolved, relationships had healed, money had appeared, opportunities had opened, not through any external action, but through the internal shift of what she was consistently giving out. The boomerang law is the most powerful force in your life. Master it by mastering what you send out, and you master your destiny. You're not a victim of circumstances. You're a creator through the boomerang law. So what will you consciously choose to give out starting right now? Now you understand the law nobody told you. Whatever you give out must come back to you exactly as you sent it. No exceptions, no excuses. Subscribe to Attraction Magnet and hit that bell icon so you keep learning Florence Scovel Shinn's life-changing wisdom. Drop a comment right now telling me which example hit you hardest or what you're going to stop giving out today. I read and answer every single comment. Your life is a perfect reflection of what you've been giving out. Change your output and watch your entire reality transform.